Hello there, my name is Ed Mansell-Lewis. I'm here at Simpson's Wine Estate with Patrick McGrath and with Charles Simpson. Patrick, you're CEO of Hatch Mansfield and Managing Director of Domaine Evremond, and you're part of this Wine Garden of England. Tell me a bit more about what Wine Garden of England is.
So the Wine Garden of England was set up in 2016, I think it was 2017 actually. It actually sort of came out of when we first planted Domaine Evremond. We asked all the significant wineries in Kent to come to the planting, because we had a lot of press there. It was a very sort of good news story for Kent. And out of it came, we realised there were a bunch of people that liked and respected each other from the key wineries in Kent, and we decided to let's work together to promote tourism and wine tourism in Kent.
Yeah. And Charles, you're co-founder of Simpson's Wine Estate, a member of one of the 8 vineyards in the Wine Garden of England. What does the Wine Garden of England do for your business?
Well, so I guess going back to 2017 when we first had the first meeting, I think it was actually in Chapel Down at their restaurant there. You know, we were relatively new back to the UK, so we were the young guys. I guess been able to ask all the silly questions, and we were surrounded by people who'd had a lot more experience, like the Chapel Downs, the Gusbourne, with tourism in Kent. And I remember that first meeting at Chapel Down, where we threw all of these ideas out there in terms of things that we could collectively work on, and the one we kept on gravitating to the top was tourism. And you know, with I guess the old adage is we should get people into Kent and then we should fight over them. And the old adage, I guess, where when the tide comes in, all the boats float. So being early on in I guess building our cellar door and wine tourism, we had a lot of experience to learn and garner for some of the people that were doing it better than we were, or for longer than we had been doing.
Yeah. And you've long been involved with some of the famous sort of French sparkling wine houses like Taittinger. I think this collaborative ethos exists in France, doesn't it?
It does, actually. I see it very strongly in France. I also actually see it in New Zealand. We look after one of the biggest brands, Villa Maria, in the UK. And actually, probably for me, the New Zealand wine industry is the best example of particularly premium wineries all working together for the benefit of brand New Zealand, helping to bring tourism to a place like Moora and Hawke's Bay, but really collective, realising Charles's point that everybody helps each other. Still commercial rivals, but sharing experiences and the common goal of educating the consumer and introducing the consumer to premium wines, whether it's from New Zealand or whether English sparkling.
And England is the newest sort of new world wine region, isn't it? And so I suppose reflecting on what New Zealand have done probably was a really useful way on reflecting on how it could be done in Kent.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think the most important thing is actually the New Zealanders, they're great people, they have a real quarter spirit between them, and they're rivals, but they're mates. And that's exactly what we got with the Wine Garden of England. We're all good friends, we see a common goal. Of course, individually, everybody's trying to sell their own wines, but not against each other, it's for the common good. And that's where I have a real strong affinity with what the Kiwis have done to what we hope we can do with the Wine Garden of England.
And just adding to that, I think what's wonderful about being in what I would describe as the most exciting viticultural place on the planet is it is a little bit, of the wild, wild west. It's meaning there's not a lot of structure there, and therefore we're able to build that structure. But there's also so much interest in this rising star that is English wine. So that we're at this early stage, we're not competitors, and then there's enough business for everyone, and that's why working collaboratively is the obvious choice.
You almost think back to the sort of mid-80s when Australia and New Zealand arrived, that sense of excitement in the UK wine industry. And that's where we are with English sparkling.
The winery here has been set up and you've been making wine for a number of years. Domaine Evremond will release its first vintage next year.
Yeah, September next year.
And the winery will be done in time for the first call?
Yes, we were hoping the winery would be ready for October this year, but we're going to miss it by about 6 weeks. So we took the call about 2 months ago. They're actually going to continue to make it our temporary winery, but the winery will be finished for probably December 23. So the first crush will be next year's. But we've converted an old barn, which you helped us acquire in the first place, into a temporary winery, which has done us proud for the last 3 years. But then we will have the brand new winery ready for next year.
The thing about still wine is you can't make it in any county because you need to have really favourable growing season conditions, don't you? With sparkling wine, there's meant to be a sharpness to it. To be sort of minerally, I think is the word that they use. You can't get away with that with still wine so much. You need to have much riper grapes, high up potential alcohol levels, which comes from high sugar levels. And high sugar levels come from good growing conditions, specifically around sunshine, low precipitation, really good free-draining soil. And that takes you to the heart of the matter around site selection and the value I think Knight Frank can bring to Wine Garden of England, which is finding suitable land. And my career began in Canterbury. I think Kent is a fabulous county for growing still wine as well as sparkling wine. What do you think, Charles, separates Kent as a growing region from other counties in the UK?
Yeah. Well, firstly, it's on chalk. So, obviously there's a lot of talk about other areas in the UK that's suitable for still wines, and most of them are east. I guess we have the advantage where we are is we're on chalk and we're east, so we've got those two levers to play on. I think the other thing we should be clear on, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of sunshine hours, and obviously Kent has a lot of that. But also there's different clones and rootstock are suitable for sparkling and some are suitable for still wine. So there's a number of things you can do, and certainly Simpsons is doing those, to concentrate on the Burgundian still wine clones that are suitable. When I say suitable, they'd be lower yielding, therefore they're producing less fruit, they're more concentrated, and therefore would have higher levels of sugar to be able to give you that. There's also things you can do in terms of vineyard management, in terms of dropping fruit, and bud rubbing or vendage en verre, as the French call it, where you're actually cutting off whole bunches, because ultimately, if you're going to make still wines, you probably have to have half the yields that you do when you have sparkling. So even on the still wine front, the wines have to be premium and expensive just because you're having to cut so much fruit off. So I think, sunshine hours, you certainly can't make still wines without them, but that just gets you to the starting point. And then it's that knowledge on clonal selection and also vineyard management and a little bit of magic in the wineries.
Yeah, quite right.